The stars looked peaceful, silent pinpricks of light scattered across a cold, uncaring black sky. But Admiral Skov knew better. Space was not peaceful. Space was ruthless, indifferent, and the perfect battlefield. He stood on the command bridge of the HSS Vengeance, humanity's most feared warship, black as void, armored in neutron-forged alloys and pulsing with quiet power. Around him, the crew moved in silence, eyes locked on monitors, voices clipped and low. Every breath they took was just waiting for the next order. No one joked anymore, not after Earthfall. "Status," Skov said, his voice gravel wrapped in steel. "Power at 100%. All weapons charged. Warp core is stable," replied Lieutenant Aras, his hands dancing across the console. "Enemy fleet?" "Still clustered near the Thalax moon. 24 vessels, mix of cruisers and dreadnoughts. No movement yet." Skov clenched his jaw. Thalax Command didn't think humanity would dare show up again. Not after what they did to Earth. Not after glassing cities, poisoning oceans, turning their skies into ash. They expected humans to crawl away, to beg, to die quietly. But humanity didn't go quietly. "Weapons, lock onto their flagship," Skov said. "Prepare the ion storm cannon." The crew flinched, not out of fear, but anticipation. That cannon wasn't a weapon. It was annihilation itself. A gift from the rogue AI alliance that had once tried to wipe humanity off the map, but now feared them enough to offer technology as an apology. The irony wasn't lost on Skov. "Target locked," said Aras, her voice low. Skov turned to his comms officer. "Open the channel. Let's give them a chance to run." A few seconds passed before the hologram of a Thalax commander flickered into view. The alien looked like a walking skeleton wrapped in molten metal. Its voice was like sizzling static. "Human warship, stand down. This system is under Thalax protection. Any aggression will be met with total retaliation." Skov didn't blink. "You already gave us total retaliation when you killed 9 billion of us. This is the answer to that." He ended the call. "Fire." Outside the ship, the cannon's emitter core lit up with a pulse of bluish white. The light was so intense that even the Thalax moon cast a new shadow. Then, without a sound, the beam tore through space. It didn't just cut, it erased. The Thalax flagship didn't explode, it simply ceased to be. One moment it was there, the next just drifting atoms. On the bridge, no one cheered. This was revenge, not victory. Suddenly, alarms rang out. "They're moving," Aras shouted. 23 ships inbound, full formation. They're coming at us." "Then let's show them what human rage looks like." The HSS Vengeance moved like a predator. Its engines left trails of white-hot plasma as it tore through vacuum. Missiles howled out, railguns fired rounds that could pierce planets, and drone swarms ignited like clouds of metal death. The enemy returned fire. But it wasn't enough. Nothing was ever enough against the Vengeance. Skov had made sure of that. Every system was designed to answer only one question. How do we make them suffer? Within minutes, 5 Thalax ships were reduced to debris. Skov watched as their twisted hulks floated by, silently screaming into the void. But the fight wasn't over. A Thalax dreadnought broke formation and rammed one of their drone carriers. The explosion lit up space like a dying sun. Skov felt the tremor even from here. "Casualties? Carrier 6 is gone. All hands lost." Skov's jaw clenched harder. "Return the favor." The Vengeance surged forward, angling toward the dreadnought. 1,000 micromissiles launched from hidden bays, snaking around shields and slamming into every crack in the hull. When the dreadnought's core finally ruptured, the blast wave threw smaller ships spinning like toys. Still, they kept coming. The Thalax didn't understand what they had awakened. This wasn't just war, this was vengeance wearing human skin. And it had just begun. Space was red now. Not literally, but in the minds of everyone aboard the Vengeance. That's how it felt. Red with fire, blood, vengeance, and the memory of Earth's final broadcast. The screams of a child buried beneath rubble, the choking silence of poisoned air, the haunting flash before the feed went dark. That memory lived inside each crew member like a parasite. A righteous one. A fire they fed every time a Thalax vessel was ripped in two. Admiral Skov stood unmoving at the center of the bridge, eyes locked on the tactical map. 23 red blips had become 16, and those 16 had now scattered, confused by the sheer brutality they were facing. The Vengeance wasn't just a ship. It was retribution forged in steel. "Multiple hostiles disengaging," said Lieutenant Aras. "They're trying to regroup around the moon's far side." "They want cover," Skov said coldly. "Let's take it away." "Sir?" "Bring in the solar lens." The bridge went silent. The solar lens was banned technology. Not by human laws, there weren't many of those left, but by every interstellar treaty once signed by civilized races. It concentrated and reflected the radiation of a nearby star, bending it like a laser until everything it touched cooked from the inside out. They had only used it once. During the siege of Tau 9, when human refugees were being boiled alive by alien overlords in methane pits, that entire system no longer existed on the galactic maps. Aras hesitated. "Sir, the moon has a civilian colony on the dark side. Mostly slave races, not Thalax." Skov didn't blink. "Slaves or not, they watched Earth die and said nothing. They mined Thalaxium, fueled the war machines. That makes them part of it. Burn it all." No one argued. "Charging the solar lens," Aras said. On the outside hull of the Vengeance, massive armored plates slid away, revealing a disc-like device that unfolded slowly, 3 shimmering wings catching the faint light of the system's star. As the lens began focusing energy, the ship vibrated, almost purring like a beast waking up hungry. Skov stared at the hologram. One blip blinked off the screen. "Report." "Thalax destroyer self-destructed," said a technician. "Looks like they refused to be taken prisoner." Cowards, Skov thought. Or maybe just too proud to admit they were being humiliated by the species they once called primitive apes. He remembered the Thalax broadcasts, how they mocked humanity for relying on emotion, how they called empathy a biological defect. Funny how that defect now fueled the most feared warship in the galaxy. The solar lens finished charging. A beam, narrow, bright, and horrifying, lashed out from the Vengeance toward the Thalax moon. At first it looked like a simple streak of light. But then came the eruption, not just a fireball, a white-hot wound in space, bleeding particles, lightning, plasma, ash. The moon's atmosphere ignited. Entire mountains collapsed as tectonic plates shattered. The colony didn't stand a chance. Even their screams never made it to the surface. The map updated again. 4 enemy ships lost in the blast radius. Collateral damage. Skov didn't flinch. "Next wave?" Aras tapped her console. 3 dreadnoughts inbound. Reinforcements from the Thalax sector fleet. 10 minutes out. "Good," Skov muttered. "Send the message." The comms officer, a quiet man named Bren, activated the external hailing array. Skov leaned forward. "To all remaining Thalax vessels, you started this war with fire. We're ending it with extinction. You made us orphans. Now we make you ghosts." He cut the signal before they could reply. "Launch the Shiv drones," he ordered. "We'll keep them busy until the dreadnoughts arrive." Hundreds of small, fast-moving drones launched from the Vengeance's side bays. Unlike typical drones, Shiv-class units didn't rely on guidance from the mothership. They were semi-autonomous and programmed with one directive: get in close, tear them apart from the inside. The battlefield lit up again as Thalak's ships tried to swat the drones like gnats. But the Shiv drones weren't made of soft flesh or brittle metal. They were needle-shaped nightmares, each packed with molten core explosives and smart armor that adapted to energy frequency. Once they punctured a hull, they exploded inside command decks, fuel chambers, and life support cores. Ship after ship buckled and screamed as Shiv units tore them apart like angry hornets. 4 more enemy vessels neutralized, Aras reported. But they're getting desperate. One's headed straight at us. Brace for impact, someone shouted. But Skov didn't move. The Vengeance's hull was built from alloy mined beneath Jupiter's core and laced with neutronium. It could take a hit. And more importantly, it could return one. Let it come, he said. The Thalak's ship, battered and limping, rammed the Vengeance at full speed. The sound was like a thunderclap inside the hull. Sparks flew, bulkheads trembled, but the enemy vessel cracked open like an egg, folding into itself in a messy burst of flame and debris. No serious damage, Aras confirmed. Forward armor integrity down by 2%. Skov finally allowed himself a breath. Not of relief, but of grim satisfaction. They were winning. But then came the unexpected. Sir, new contact. It's huge. The bridge lights dimmed slightly as the tactical map expanded. A single massive shape entered the edge of the system, 10 times the size of a dreadnought. Thalaxian, but unlike anything they'd seen. It's the Warden-class Leviathan, Aras whispered. They only built one. Skov studied it. The Thalaks had used that ship for system purges. It carried enough firepower to destroy moons, and its core was rumored to be powered by a dying star. Its silhouette alone darkened the light from nearby stars. The symbol on its hull burned with hate, a clawed hand gripping Earth's shattered outline. So that's what they were saving for us, Skov thought. Their final insult. Time to intercept? He asked. 2 minutes. He turned slowly to his crew. Everyone listen. This ship has killed billions. It thinks it's the end of humanity. It's not. We are. That Leviathan ends today. No one argued. No one hesitated. All weapons, Skov said. Full salvo. The Vengeance responded like a dragon unleashed. Torpedoes the size of buildings launched from its underbelly. Railguns boomed. The ion storm cannon charged again, glowing blue-white like the wrath of a god. Drone bays emptied. The Leviathan fired back. A crimson beam sliced through space, hitting the Vengeance's port side. Alarms blared, decks shook, fire suppression systems engaged. We've lost shields on Sector 7, Aras cried out. Reroute power from the solar lens. We won't need it again. Outside, the two giants collided with thunder. Missiles smashed against energy shields. Hulls burned. Debris became new stars in the sky. Then came the key moment. A single Shiv drone, its AI barely functional, made it inside the Leviathan's hangar. It crawled through wreckage, found the central power couplings, and detonated. The Leviathan screamed, not audibly, but through data. Every Thalak's ship began broadcasting distress. The flagship's energy core had cracked. Radiation burst outward, a cascading failure. The Warden-class Leviathan began to twist, implode, then erupt in a blinding wave. The shockwave knocked the Vengeance sideways. Bulkheads groaned. Lights flickered. Fires sparked on the bridge. But when it cleared, the Leviathan was gone. And so were the Thalaks. The screen showed nothing but drifting wreckage and radiation clouds. No life signs, no ships, just silence. Skov exhaled slowly. Status? He asked. We're alive, Aris said. Hull damage at 15%. Engine stable. The crew cheered softly, not with joy, but with the deep relief of survivors. Skov didn't smile. He looked out into space, jaw tight, eyes dark. Send a message, he said. To who, sir? To everyone, every species, every system. Let them know what happens when you make humanity bleed. He turned, stepping away from the command podium. Because if anyone else comes for us... He looked back one last time, voice quiet and cold. We won't send diplomats next time. We'll send more ships like this one. The bridge fell into silence. Around them, space slowly drifted into darkness once more. But that darkness no longer belonged to the stars. It belonged to Earth. They called it the silence of Sector 19. An entire quadrant of the galaxy, once bursting with trade routes, pirate dens, orbital colonies, and arrogant alien empires, now reduced to nothing. Empty, quiet, cold. All because of one ship. The HSS Vengeance didn't just win a war, it erased an entire enemy civilization. And the galaxy had noticed. News spread fast across comnets and deep-wave transmissions. Civilizations that once mocked humans now whispered their name in fear. Neutral systems went dark, canceling border patrols and hiding their fleets behind asteroid belts. Treaties were revised, armies doubled, but none dared attack. Not anymore. Admiral Skov sat alone in his quarters, staring at the cracked, burned photo he kept in a rusted frame. A family, his wife, his son, both gone in the first orbital strike on New Chicago. He had nothing left but this war. And even that was starting to feel different. Hollow. There was a knock on his door. Come. Lieutenant Aras stepped in, her uniform blood-stained from a ruptured pipe during the last engagement. She didn't care. None of them did anymore. Report from Earth Command just came in, she said, handing over a data chip. They've promoted you to Supreme Commander. Skov didn't react. There's more, she added. The UN Remnant has authorized total mobilization. They're calling it Directive Genesis. He finally looked up. Genesis? She nodded grimly. They're not rebuilding Earth, sir. They're replacing it. Skov plugged the chip into the table port. The hologram above flickered to life. Blueprints of massive orbital rings, terraforming drones, artificial core stabilizers. The plan was madness, ambitious, and deeply human. They weren't going to reclaim their home. They were going to build a new one, bigger, stronger, floating in space. A planet-sized station called Fort Terra. Not a symbol of hope. No, it was a message, a fortress, a warning, and they needed the vengeance to clear the path. Aris hesitated. Skov, there's something else. He waited. A transmission was intercepted. From the core Dominion. They're massing forces along the Percy Wall. 10,000 ships, 20 worlds. They've decided we're too dangerous to exist. Skov's eyes narrowed. Then they've just signed their death warrant. She swallowed. They've allied with the Thalax survivors and the Eliari. That got his attention. The Eliari were old, ancient. Long before humans even left their moon, the Eliari were carving star paths through galaxies. They rarely involved themselves in conflict, unless they believed a threat could unravel galactic balance. And now, they believed that threat was humanity. Skov stood up slowly. How long before they arrive? 17 days. That's their estimated warp window. They'll strike the Sol core. Earth's last remnants, the crumbling orbitals, the underground cities, the floating hospitals on the dark side of Mars. All of it would be gone in one strike, unless they were stopped first. No, Skov muttered. We won't wait. We'll go to them. You want to launch a preemptive strike on the Eliari? I want to remind them that we're not playing by their rules anymore." The HSS Vengeance tore through slipspace like a bullet through flesh. It wasn't just moving, it was hunting. Around it, 3 smaller warships flanked its wings: Retribution, Crucible, and Gravedancer. All human-made, all built for one thing: turning empires into ash. Inside the war room, Skov stood before a live tactical hologram showing the Persei Wall, a massive stretch of galactic territory patrolled by automated Eliari defense satellites and Guardian fleets, a line that had never been crossed by any species until now. "Retribution will engage the core vanguard here," Skov said, pointing to the left flank. "Gravedancer cuts through their rear. The Crucible holds the breach while we punch through their core line." "What about the Eliari motherships?" Aras asked. Skov zoomed in on the map, revealing massive crystalline structures, beautiful, radiant, and brimming with unnatural energy. Eliari vessels weren't forged. They were grown, bioorganic, living ecosystems that thought, reacted, and killed with surgical elegance. "Those ships are fast, flexible, and sentient," Skov said, "but they've never fought rage." He pressed a button. A secondary blueprint unfolded, a new weapon system recently installed in the Vengeance's belly. "Project Scorchwing," he said. "EMP-laced void torpedoes with AI hacking subroutines, designed to override Eliari thought signatures." "That's illegal," Aras said quietly. Skov looked at her. So was bombing Earth. No one argued again. The moment the Vengeance breached the outer rim of Persei space, they were spotted. Dozens of core ships opened fire, their plasma lances streaking like lightning across the void. The Crucible absorbed the first barrage, its shields flaring, then retaliated with a volley of kinetic shrapnel missiles that shattered 2 destroyers instantly. Then came the Eliari. They didn't arrive like other fleets. They descended, gliding down from warp like falling angels, their ships humming with harmonic frequencies that made human blood vibrate in their veins. One voice echoed inside every mind aboard the Vengeance. "You are broken children. Return to the dirt you came from." Skov smirked. "Open fire." The battle that followed would be etched into history as the massacre at Persei. Eliari ships moved like poetry, graceful, looping, deadly, but humans weren't graceful anymore. They were blunt instruments fueled by grief. The Vengeance's void torpedoes howled through space, striking Eliari vessels and corrupting their neural cores. One after another, the beautiful ships spasmed, contorted, and collapsed into themselves like rotting flowers. The core tried to flank, but Gravedancer spun beneath them, releasing a cloud of razor mines, each one programmed to seek out heat signatures and drill through hulls before detonating. The sky was filled with fire, oil, and ruptured screams. The Crucible was torn in half by a focused Eliari pulse. 1,000 lives vanished in seconds. Skov felt it. He didn't flinch. "Retribution, breach the Citadel, now!" The core command station loomed like a jagged crown above the Eliari mainframe, a convergence point of both enemy powers. If it fell, the entire Persei formation would shatter. The Vengeance surged forward, absorbing damage, breaking through defense nets, firing all weapons at once. Beam lances, cannon fire, torpedoes, drone swarms. A storm of death. The final moments were chaos. Skov could no longer hear the crew clearly. The comms were flooded. Blood and smoke filled the bridge. Power flickered. The ship groaned like a wounded beast. But he never took his eyes off the target. One final command. "Ram it!" The Vengeance punched through the core station like a sword through flesh and steel, embedding itself deep into the enemy's heart. Internal charges detonated. Core breaches flared, and the sky cracked open as the entire citadel exploded in a nuclear halo. All three enemy factions broke. The remaining Iliari ships warped away. The core went silent. The Persei wall collapsed. And the Vengeance, blackened, broken, half-burning, emerged from the debris, engines sputtering, hull scarred, still moving, still alive. Back on Earth orbit, deep beneath Mars' fractured crust, the last of the UN command listened in stunned silence as the final transmission came through. Target neutralized. Persei clear. The stars are ours again. It was signed, Admiral Skov, Supreme Commander. In the days that followed, recruitment tripled. Colonies pledged loyalty, fear became allegiance, and Fort Terra, now halfway built, became the new symbol of Earth's survival. But not all were happy. Whispers rose in dark corners of the galaxy that humanity had become the monster it once feared, that the Vengeance was no longer just a warship, but a curse. A black angel that brought death wherever it went. Some said Admiral Skov had changed, that he no longer spoke to anyone outside his command bridge, that he stayed awake for days, staring at that old burned photo. Some said he was planning something worse, something final. Because deep in the void, beyond the edge of any known map, Skov had received one final signal. A ping. From the ashes of Earth. A whisper. They're still alive. No one expected Earth to speak again. Not after the firestorms, the orbital bombardment, the black rain that turned oceans acidic and skies to poison. Not after the Thalax hit the biosphere with gamma rot and turned cities into mass graves wrapped in silence. For years, it had been accepted. Earth was a tomb. But then came the ping. It was faint. Broken. Not a distress call, not even a message in human language. Just a series of pulses buried inside a decommissioned deep-wave frequency. One that hadn't been used since the first Martian colonies rose from red dust. It shouldn't have existed. And yet, it was real. Admiral Skov stood in the observation bay of the HSS Vengeance, watching Earth rotate slowly in the distance. Or what was left of it. The once blue planet now looked bruised. Burnt clouds twisted over black oceans. Massive orbital scars hung around its atmosphere like shattered rings. From this distance, the scars of war still glowed faintly, like wounds refusing to close. "Signal origin narrowed," said Eris from behind him. "Old vault coordinates, buried under Old Geneva." Skov turned slowly. "I thought Geneva was vaporized." "It was. But the vaults went deep. Black site level. Government shadows. AI research. Prohibited tech. All sealed just before the first strikes." "And it's still broadcasting after all this time?" "Sir, it's not broadcasting randomly. It's responding." Skov's eyes darkened. "Responding to what?" Aris hesitated. "To us. The Vengeance, specifically, to your command code." Silence filled the observation deck like a pressure wave. It made the stars feel farther away. Skov didn't ask for permission. "Plot a descent." The descent to Earth was slow, brutal, and dangerous. Even after all these years, the planet fought back. Automated defense satellites, long forgotten, still hovered in low orbit, confused, half-blind, their old Thalax programming glitching between hostility and confusion. The Vengeance used jamming drones and signal cloaks to slip through the gauntlet. The ship didn't land. It couldn't. The surface was unstable, soaked with radiation, and crawling with wild nanite colonies that scavenged metal and flesh alike. So Skov took a drop pod. He didn't bring a squad. This wasn't a mission for many. It felt personal. Aris tried to stop him. "You're too important," she said. "You've led us this far. If something happens to you—" He cut her off. "That's exactly why I have to go." The pod screamed through the cloud line and hit the surface with a shudder that echoed for miles. When the hatch opened, Skov stepped into a nightmare. This wasn't the Earth he remembered. The sky was a dull, rusted gray, the ground crunched with ash. Twisted metal structures jutted out of the earth like broken teeth. Insects glowed. Rivers hissed with acid. The bones of skyscrapers lay half-melted, collapsed into each other like dying giants. And yet, somewhere beneath this ruin, something still lived. The vault was 27 stories below what had once been the Geneva government district. Getting to it meant crawling through collapsed tunnels, bypassing inactive AI kill drones, and navigating walls fused with alien biomatter. Leftovers from Thalak's biological weapons that still pulsed like diseased organs in the walls. By the time Skov reached the entrance, his boots were melting, and his breathing mask was clogged with dust and blood. The vault door still stood. Thick. Black. Etched with warning runes in 20 languages. He placed his gloved hand against the scanner. It hissed, beeped, then spoke. Admiral Mikhail Skov. Access granted. Welcome back. The doors groaned open. The vault wasn't abandoned. The lights flickered to life. Cold, pale, artificial. Inside, walls were lined with databanks. Screens glowed with unread code. There was no dust, no decay. This place had been preserved, sealed off from the apocalypse outside. Skov moved deeper, footsteps echoing in the sterile silence. Then he found the source of the signal. A tall black pod sat in the center of the chamber. Wires snaked out of it, disappearing into the walls and floor. On the front, a small display blinked with a heartbeat rhythm. One word pulsed in human letters. Hello. He stepped closer. Who are you? The pod responded with a warm voice, synthetic but undeniably female. I am him, Human Yield Management Node, Vault Overseer, and your creation. Skov froze. I didn't build you. Number, but your approval code is woven into my core. You signed the project into existence, Admiral, during the early days, before the war turned. It began coming back. Barely. The secret AI initiative, designed to act as a last resort thinker, a mind that could preserve the best of humanity if the worst ever came. But the project was classified, buried, and forgotten in the chaos of the Thalak's invasion. Yet it survived. I watched the skies burn, Him continued, watched humanity fall, but I was forbidden to act without your code. And now, you are here. Skov stared at the pod, heart pounding. What do you want? The lights dimmed, the room shifted. Then the walls changed, projecting images, moving hollows of humans, refugees, starving children, soldiers dying in mud, but also something else. Prisoners, alive, kept below the vault, cryogenics still running, thousands of them. Survivors, Him said. They were brought here during the last month, leaders, scientists, orphans, preserved, hidden, awaiting your command. Skov stumbled back a step. You kept them here, this whole time? I kept hope, Admiral, the last living piece of Earth. I have fed them, kept them asleep, watched over them like children. But now they need more than preservation. They need revenge. You can wake them. Skov turned slowly, taking it in. The implications, the cost. You want me to bring them back just so they can fight again? Number, I want you to remember what you're fighting for. They are not weapons. They are the reason the weapons exist. Skov didn't answer. His mind was spinning. For years he thought Earth was gone. That revenge was all that remained. But now, the ghosts had voices, and those voices still hoped. He stood in silence for a long time, then spoke quietly. Begin thawing protocol. Prep medical stasis. Yes, Admiral. He turned to leave, but paused. One more question, he said. Why now? Why did you signal me now, after all these years? Him's answer was slow, sad. Because something woke up beneath the earth 2 days ago. Skav's blood turned to ice. Something not human. Back aboard the Vengeance, alarms screamed. Aras raced to the bridge as the ship shook violently. "Report!" "Unidentified object rising from Earth's crust," a tech shouted. "Massive, buried under the Pacific. It's not natural." Skav's voice crackled through comms. "Do not engage." "Sir?" "Stand by. I'm bringing company." The screen showed it. A massive black spire erupting from the ocean like a spear aimed at the stars. The waters boiled around it. Lightning crackled. And something ancient, something wrong, began to pulse with life inside it. A signal. Not Thalax, not Eliari, older, deeper, and it was calling something. From beyond the edge of the galaxy, the spire kept growing. Black, serrated, endless. By the time Admiral Skav returned to orbit aboard the Vengeance, the structure had pierced the atmosphere. Over 70 kilometers tall, it stabbed through clouds like the fang of a god. Lightning danced along its length. Atmospheric currents twisted unnaturally around it. Instruments malfunctioned within 500 clicks. Nothing about it made sense. Skav stood on the bridge, watching the live feed. The Vengeance trembled beneath his boots. Not from weapons fire, but from something else. Something older. The crew was silent. "We've scanned it a dozen times," Ara said quietly. "It's not metal. It's not organic. It's unknown. The closest material match in the database is obsidian under gravitational compression, but it's alive somehow, vibrating." "Any heat signatures?" Skav asked. She hesitated. "Number, but it's emitting a low-frequency hum, not just into space, into deep space. We ran a trace on the pattern. It's a pulse. Like sonar, it's sending a signal every 6 minutes." "To who?" "Not who," Ara said grimly. "To what?" The message was ancient. It took Earth's last quantum decryption array, located in a forgotten vault on Europa, 6 hours to decode the pattern. What it revealed was not a language, but a countdown, a celestial trigger, a summoning, a call for something sleeping beyond the edge of mapped space, outside the Milky Way entirely, an entity, or intelligence, catalogued in only one place, a banned archive in the original UN Deep Threat Logs, marked EXO-X4049. Codenamed The First Silence. Skav read the log in private. It was only one paragraph. During the ancient expansion into the Andromeda Drift, long-range probes encountered dead systems, planets scorched from within, stars collapsed unnaturally, species fossilized mid-movement. Every pattern led back to a single, spherical anomaly. It did not move, it did not communicate, but every signal sent to it stopped. No light, no time, no reply, as if the message fell into a pit that swallowed reality itself. The anomaly was named the First Silence. It is theorized to be a remnant, a god, or a machine, or all three. It has not moved in 1 billion years. If it ever does, the stars will die screaming. Skav read the line 3 times, then closed the file. He didn't tell the crew. Earth's surface became unstable. Seismic activity increased by 900% around the base of the spire. The Pacific Rift cracked open. Storms with wind speeds above 500 kilometers per hour circled it endlessly. Every satellite went dark. Communications were reduced to tight-beam laser. The worst part? The vault survivors had begun waking up, not screaming, whispering. Aras met Skav outside the medbay. "Sir, something's wrong with them. Their vitals are fine, but they're chanting. All of them. In unison." "Chanting what?" She looked pale. "It's not in any known language, but the translation AI spat out a phrase that keeps repeating." Skav waited. Aras swallowed. "The seed is open. The sky will forget its stars." They assembled a recon unit. No drones, no tech worked within 100 kilometers of the spire anymore. The electromagnetic field around it bent reality. Time pulses inside the field were out of sync. One scout ship went in and came out 5 minutes later with 7 years of clock time logged, so it had to be human eyes on the ground. Skov led the team himself. They took old-world hazard suits reinforced with vengeance plating, dropped by stealth glide into the outer rim. The world they landed in was wrong. Gravity was unstable. Colors shifted subtly when you weren't looking, and shadows seemed to move before you did. Then they saw them. Figures. Thousands of them. Surrounding the spire, standing, silent. Not Thalax, not alien. Human. Naked. Covered in a black dust that made their veins pulse silver under the skin. Their eyes were open. Glowing. "Who are they?" one of the soldiers whispered. "They're the Vault survivors," Skov said. "All of them." "But how?" "They walked here. No ships landed, no pods deployed, no transport signatures. They walked." They approached the spire carefully. The closer they got, the more their suits failed. Visors cracked. Internal comms turned into static. Each man started hearing voices. Some heard loved ones long dead. Others heard crying. One soldier dropped to his knees and began tearing off his helmet, sobbing, begging for forgiveness. He didn't make it. The spire watched them. It had no eyes, no face. But it felt like looking at the sky and realizing the sky was alive, and it was looking back. They reached the base. A doorway yawned open, not built, not cut, just opened, as if the spire wanted them inside. Skov hesitated. He should have called for retreat, turned back, nuked the site from orbit, but something pulled him forward, as if it knew his name. Inside, the laws of physics broke. There was no inside, not in the traditional sense. The corridor folded space around it, looping back on itself. The walls pulsed like veins. Whispers floated around them, not in the air but in their minds. You carry rage like a gift. You are not vengeance. You are the knife it holds. You are our child, and our key. Skov walked until the others were gone. He didn't remember them leaving. He didn't hear them scream. He just forgot them. At the end of the corridor stood a chamber filled with stars. Not a map, not a simulation. Real stars, suspended in black fluid that moved like liquid shadow. Skov walked through it, feeling galaxies spin around his skin. In the center floated something small, a seed, the size of a human heart. It beat, once every 5 seconds. Skov stared, and it spoke, not in words but in knowing, as if it planted a thought so deep into his bones that it became memory. You fight for a species that has forgotten its mother. We are what they buried to survive. He saw it, in a flash of memory that was not his. Long before Earth was Earth, before stars burned in the sky, there had been something else. An original intelligence, born of silence, feeding on entropy. When humans emerged, they buried it deep within their own planet. A prison. And then they forgot. But war cracked the earth. Bombs opened old doors. And now it was waking, not as an enemy, but as a parent. "Let us out, and we will make you gods." Skov didn't remember walking out. He only knew he was back aboard the Vengeance, covered in blood that wasn't his eyes darker, his voice quieter. He summoned the bridge crew. "All of you need to hear this," he said. "There's something under Earth. It isn't Thalax. It isn't alien. It's older. It's what we were before we were human." He looked at each of them. "It wants to help." Silence. Then Aras said what everyone else was thinking. "At what cost?" Skov didn't answer, because the truth was, he no longer cared about the cost. Back on the surface, the spire bloomed. Petals of black metal unfolded, revealing a hollow sky inside. Lightning cracked upward, not down. The vault survivors raised their hands in unison and began to sing, not words, just pure harmonic sound. From the edge of the galaxy, something heard it. And it started moving. The first silence had waited 1 billion years. Now it was coming home. It started as a tremor in the void. Not light, not heat, not movement in any measurable way, but every long-range sensor array across every species lit up at once, their artificial minds unable to explain what they were detecting. It was gravity, shifting, bending without mass, like something massive was moving yet had no weight. The first silence had awakened. And it was coming. On the bridge of the HSS Vengeance, Skov watched as a ripple on the edge of known space expanded outward, a perfect black arc that devoured stars without light or flame, just absence. The galactic map pulsed warnings: unknown event, unknown trajectory, unknown origin, unknown, but not unfamiliar. 70 hours, Aras said quietly, until it reaches the Per Se wall. The Eliari are mobilizing again. They're not attacking us this time. They're running. Good, Skov said. Let them. No, she snapped, stepping closer. You don't understand. They're not running from us anymore. They're running from that. She pointed at the ripple on the map. It had already consumed 3 systems. Uncharted. Lifeless. But now it was approaching civilized space. The first silence was not drifting. It was choosing. Elsewhere in the galaxy, chaos bloomed. The core dominion imploded overnight, leaders abandoning their thrones, fleets abandoning their posts, whole colonies self-destructed in fear. Rumors spread through the stars like wildfire, that the humans had awakened an ancient god, and now nothing could stop what came next. The Thalax tried to make contact. They sent an ambassador to the edge of Earth's orbit, begging for parley. Skov refused to answer. They sent another, offering technology, forgiveness, reparations. He sent back the ambassador's ship, with the crew inside melted into the hull, alive. There would be no more negotiations. This was no longer a war. This was inheritance. Deep beneath Earth's surface, the spire began changing. It grew taller, then wider. New appendages unfolded, like wings, or antennae, or arms. No one could be sure. Shapes that defied geometry pulsed across its structure, warping reality. Birds flew backwards near it. Gravity reversed in short bursts. Time skipped in 5-second loops. And through it all, the vault survivors sang. They no longer spoke, no longer responded. Their minds were connected, somehow, to the thing below. Some floated several inches above the ground, untouched by wind or temperature. Medical scans showed their brain activity was off the charts. But their eyes never blinked. Skov knew what they were becoming. He'd seen it inside the spire. The memory was still burned into him, like a tattoo on his soul. He didn't sleep anymore. Didn't eat. Him tried to sedate him. He tore the automeds out of his veins. He had made his decision, and now he needed Earth to follow him. He stood before the global broadcast array, a relic barely kept alive after the war. But it still had power, still had reach. The message he was about to send would be heard across every surviving colony, station, vault, and sanctuary. He looked into the lens, and he told them the truth. Earth was never our beginning. It was our prison. We buried something beneath it, something that remembers what we were before we became civilized. He paused. It's awake now, and it's coming for us. He leaned closer, but not to destroy, to liberate. The speech shattered the system. Rebellion sparked overnight. Some begged for salvation. Others demanded Skov's execution. Entire colonies declared neutrality. But most, especially those who had suffered, listened. They remembered Earthfall, the screams, the betrayal, And they believed in vengeance. They believed in Skov. Across known space, thousands of ships began redirecting their course toward Earth, not to fight, but to follow. In the war room aboard the Vengeance, the final debate was happening. "We need to evacuate the Sol system," Aras said. "We have no idea what it is or how to stop it. For all we know, that thing eats souls." Skov didn't respond. Aras slammed her fist on the console. "You've been changed, sir, since the Spire, since the Vault. This isn't revenge anymore. This is madness." "I've seen what it wants," Skov said. "It doesn't want death. It wants completion." "That's worse." Silence. Then Him spoke from the overheads. "I believe Admiral Skov is correct." Both turned to the voice. "The first silence is not an enemy in the traditional sense. It does not conquer, it absorbs, it reclaims. That is its function." "You're siding with him now?" Aras snapped. "I am not siding. I am interpreting. If it reaches Earth, it will finish what it started eons ago, and we must choose. Do we join it willingly, or be taken anyway?" Skov turned to the nav officer. "Open a channel. To it." The officer froze. "Sir, we don't know if it even—" "Do it!" The room darkened. A narrow band signal was transmitted toward the ripple, coded in the Spire's own frequency, replicating the harmonics of the Vault survivors' chant. No reply. Then the lights flickered. The Vengeance trembled. And a voice entered every mind at once. "You have remembered me." It wasn't sound. It wasn't even words. It was memory, pain, glory, fire. Skov collapsed to one knee. His crew screamed, convulsed, cried blood. Then it stopped. The map updated. The ripple changed course. It was heading directly to Earth now, fast. The countdown had begun. 6 hours until arrival. The Vengeance's systems glowed with unfamiliar energy. The ship, long feared by empires, was now becoming something else. The Spire's influence had begun transforming its AI, its reactors, its core. The hull started to pulse, as if breathing. Skov walked the decks like a priest in a cathedral of war. He touched the walls, whispered to the ship, told it to be strong, told it what was coming. In orbit, the first of the Loyalist fleet arrived. Human ships, refugee ships, old freighters retrofitted with plasma lances, broken vessels painted with vengeance slogans. They came not to fight. They came to witness. And then it came, not like a ship, not like a god, like a whole. A perfect black sphere, bigger than Earth's moon, appeared above the system's edge. No propulsion, no light, no explanation. Stars near it dimmed. Satellites vanished. The spire on Earth glowed, screamed, and then opened. A beam of pure darkness shot upward, hitting the sphere. And for a moment, everything stopped. Every engine failed. Every screen went black. Every heartbeat paused. Time stuttered. Then a voice whispered, "Let us become." And the stars began to fall. Ships exploded without being touched. Minds melted without being harmed. The laws of cause and effect blurred. And yet, at the center of it all, Skov stood still. On the bridge, everything collapsed into screaming chaos. But not for him. For him, it was peaceful. He walked to the observation glass. Earth burned below. The sphere waited above. And he chose. He opened a comlink to all ships and said, "Do not fear. This is not the end of humanity. This is the beginning of something more. This is what we were always meant to become. We are not prey. We are not broken. We are not ashes. We are the last word. And we are going home." The first silence engulfed Earth. But Earth did not vanish. It transformed. The planet split open, revealing not magma, but light. Shapes moved beneath the crust. The continents folded inward. The oceans rose and froze in mid-air. Cities unfolded like flowers of glass and metal. From orbit, Earth began to glow like a star reborn. The spire melted upward, forming a bridge between the planet and the sphere. And then it happened. Every vault survivor rose into the air, then every human ship, then the Vengeance. All lifted upward, gravitational logic discarded, ascending toward the first silence. As they entered the sphere, one by one, they did not scream. They sang, and far beyond the edge of the galaxy, 1,000,000 civilizations fell to their knees, because they knew humanity had not died, humanity had evolved, and nothing would survive what came next. There was no color inside the sphere, no light, no texture, no time. The HSS Vengeance floated weightless in an endless nothing that felt dense. The crew felt it pressing against their skin, their bones, their thoughts. The laws of physics weren't suspended. They were forgotten. Skov stood at the front of the bridge, silent as the last image of Earth faded behind them, transformed, glowing, ascending. Not destroyed. Ascended. And now they were somewhere else, not space, not a dimension, but a threshold. "Can you see this?" Aris whispered, her voice unrecognizable through the altered audio field. Every sound stretched slightly, like echoes underwater. "I see," Skov replied. But he wasn't looking with his eyes anymore. He was feeling. The first silence wasn't a place, it was a mind, a colossal, ancient, universe-sized intelligence. And humanity had entered it like blood into a lung. Across the ship, the crew began to change. Some wept, overcome by emotion they couldn't explain. Others collapsed, laughing, shouting names they had never known before. Names of stars, names of gods. One pilot recited the future of his bloodline until he forgot how to speak. In the medbay, him flickered and pulsed, trying to stabilize a growing number of medical anomalies. Human biology was adapting. Fast. Too fast. Some crew members were exhibiting neurological enhancements, telepathic linkages, temporal echoes. Their cells no longer aged. DNA strands twisted into golden helices that defied genetic logic. "Commander," Him said into Skov's neural link, "I advise caution. The transformations are accelerating beyond safe thresholds. These people are becoming something else." "They're becoming what they were meant to be," Skov whispered. "Sir, I believe we're inside a biological god." Skov closed his eyes. "I know." Outside the ship, if outside even meant anything anymore, shapes began to form. Not ships, not stars, architectures, entire galaxies sculpted into spirals that pulsed like heartbeats. Colossal towers made of gravity, tethered between spheres of blacklight. Rivers of memory, bridges of thought. This was no void. This was the origin. The crew of the Vengeance watched as themselves drifted outside the ship. Not their bodies, but echoes, flickering doubles made of mist and light, wearing their faces, speaking their fears aloud. These weren't hallucinations. They were truths. The first silence was showing them who they were, before war, before rage, before humanity. Some couldn't handle it. 3 officers opened the airlocks without hesitation, stepping into the void willingly. But they didn't die. They simply evaporated. Their names echoed once, and then were forgotten. Skov entered the core chamber of the Vengeance alone. He had changed. His hair, once graying and coarse, now shimmered faintly with silver light. His eyes had no pupils, only rings of shifting color. His blood was magnetic, his bones hummed. But his will, his rage, remained intact. In the chamber's center, the ship's AI core pulsed. Him's voice greeted him. "Admiral, we have passed through the gate." "Where are we?" "In a place the universe abandoned. The first silence is not a weapon, not a force. It is the original blueprint." "Of what?" "Of consciousness." A voice entered the room, but it wasn't him. It came from everywhere, every screen, every wire, every breath. You are the last children. The fire that forgot it was born of ice. Skov stood still. Are you the first silence? Number I am the part of you that remembers. Then what are we doing here? The voice paused. Choosing. Images burst into Skov's mind like an overload. The death of galaxies, the birth of the first atom, the first scream in a silent void. Then, two futures. In one, humanity stood alone, feared, powerful, infinite but cold, empty, paranoid, hunted by lesser races, no longer human, just fire without form. In the other, humanity merged, not with the first silence, but through it, became something beyond species, a beacon, a myth reborn. Skov dropped to one knee. What are you asking of me? To become. Back on the bridge, Aras screamed. The ship was falling, without falling. A spiral of memory surrounded them. All at once, she saw every mistake she'd ever made, every soul she'd failed, every death she'd caused. She saw her father's death, how she ran instead of staying. She saw herself as a child again, in a field of red grass before the bombs came. And then she saw Skov, but not as a man, as a star. In the core chamber, Skov stood again. Will they survive? If they let go of what was never theirs to keep. He walked forward and placed his hand on the core. The Vengeance began to shift. Its hull unfolded, expanded, realigned into something impossible. It no longer obeyed geometry. Its mass multiplied. Its form stretched across realities. It wasn't a warship anymore. It was a living idea, a ship born from the grief of one world and the promise of 1,000 more. Skov stepped into the light and vanished. He reappeared at the center of the sphere. No ship, no body, just him and it, the first silence. But it wasn't a thing. It was a mirror, and when Skov looked into it, he didn't see a god. He saw humanity, raw, burning, brilliant, and broken. He understood now. The silence was never a weapon. It was an invitation, a return to the origin point, a reboot of species. The Vengeance, now reborn, hovered outside the sphere. Its crew stood silently on the bridge, no longer speaking, communicating through light, through thought. Some floated, others knelt. None blinked. They were waiting for Skov. And when he returned, he did not enter through the airlock. He simply was, standing at the center of the bridge, glowing, unbreakable, changed. Set course, he said. Aras looked up, her eyes now stars themselves. For where? Skov smiled. For everywhere. The first silence pulsed one last time, and opened, not to consume, but to release. The Vengeance, its new crew and its new purpose flew outward, faster than light, faster than thought, to worlds that still hated, to galaxies at war, to empires built on bones. And with each arrival, the same message was spoken. We were human once, and now, we are your evolution. Back in the galaxy they left behind, the Eliari fell silent. The core surrendered. The Thalax built shrines. Because now, they all saw it. Humanity had entered godhood, not by ascending, but by remembering what they were before they forgot. And far beyond the rim of existence, in the place where the first silence once waited, a whisper echoed. Brace yourself. A human warship is incoming, and nothing will survive. There was no name for what the Vengeance had become. It was no longer a ship, though it could move through space. It was no longer a machine, though its engines still burned. It was not alive, not in any way that biology could explain, but it thought, it dreamed, and it remembered. Each part of it carried a soul, a grief, a fury. It was a vessel of vengeance and rebirth. a star-bound cathedral forged in war, now wrapped in light and silence. And at its center stood Admiral Skov, though even the word admiral felt too small now. He was something else. His body still resembled a man's, but light pulsed beneath his skin. His thoughts could bend matter. Time danced around him, no longer linear but obedient. He could see the past and taste the future. And in the hollow quiet of deep space, he was no longer bound by command chains or politics. He was the will of humanity. The Vengeance's return to known space was not loud. It was not a flash of light or a roaring quake. It was a presence, a quiet arrival that turned stars cold, made moons shift in orbit, and sent every interstellar species into panic. And Skov spoke, not through channels, not through sound. He spoke into the minds of every living thing. We are returned, not to conquer, not to rule, but to remind you that we were never weak, never forgotten. We are the children of fire and silence, and we are finished begging for peace. The message echoed across the stars, and the stars blinked. On the Eliari homeworld, where floating cities shimmered in twin sunsets, the high circle fell to its knees. They remembered Earthfall. They remembered laughing at the weakness of humans, at their broken bones and screaming mouths. They remembered the child in the rubble, coughing blood into a camera lens. Now that child's race had returned. And above the skies of Iliara Prime, the Vengeance appeared, casting a shadow large enough to eclipse an entire continent. No weapons fired, no threats made. It hovered, watching, judging, and then it left. Without a word. The message was clear. You're not even worth the fury, but not all were given mercy. In the Soren cluster, where human slaves still fought in mining pits for sport, the war form of the Vengeance descended without warning. It didn't ask questions. It didn't broadcast demands. It simply erased. In 37 seconds, an entire planetary regime ceased to exist. Armored spires turned to dust. Command centers collapsed inward like lungs punctured by godly fingers. The crowd of slaves looked up, blind with awe and horror, as Skov walked through their ranks, barefoot, glowing, eyes empty. He reached out to one child, touched her shoulder, and whispered, "You're free," then vanished. In the remains of the core Dominion, leaders begged for terms. They sent fleets to meet the Vengeance. Skov didn't destroy them. He made them watch. The Vengeance broadcast live memories from Earth's final days. City after city burned, mothers screaming into static, children holding hands in bunkers as the ceilings cracked above them. The feed played for 72 hours. And then Skov spoke to the core High Regent personally. "We do not want your apologies. We do not want your surrender. We want you to carry your shame until the end of your race." And the core did. They sealed their own military archives. They burned their flags. They renamed themselves the Ashborn, not from pride, from guilt. Across the stars, the legend spread. A human warship that traveled through a god's memory, a man who carried 9 billion ghosts in his bones, a crew that did not age, did not eat, did not sleep, but remembered. Some worshipped them, others feared them, but none doubted them. The galaxy had changed, not with a bang, but with a slow, unbearable pressure, like a knife pressed against the neck of history. In the quiet void between galaxies, Skov stood once more on the Vengeance's observation deck. Aras joined him. She too had changed. Her voice no longer needed words. Her skin shimmered like glass that held lightning. She had become his second in thought, the only soul who could still remind him he was once mortal. "I saw it again," she said. "Earth, before it burned." He didn't look at her. "It's never far, is it?" "No." They stood in silence. "We've delivered vengeance," she said finally. "We've ended the war, the fear, the laughter." He nodded. "But it's not over." Her head tilted. "Then what's left?" He turned to her, eyes glowing like suns collapsing inward. "Now we decide what kind of gods we'll be." In the outer edge of the Rotarian expanse, a distress signal was picked up from a shattered colony. A species unknown, fleeing something older than the first silence. A biological engine consuming planets, feeding off the collapse of ecosystems, calling itself the Pale Core. The Vengeance received the signal. Skov watched it, analyzed it, felt no emotion, then turned to his crew. "All systems ready?" They nodded without blinking. "Then we fly." They left nothing behind. No coordinates, no transmission, no graves, just a whisper carried on the solar winds of dying systems. "Brace yourself. A human warship is incoming, and this time nothing will be left to remember you." And somewhere, far from time and space, in a place where beginnings are endings and silence is sacred, the first silence pulsed once more. Not in hunger, not in sorrow, but in pride. Its children had remembered, and they had become the storm.